And then it also happens that someone from a nearby city or a friend or a family member will come and say, we have a job, a better job for your daughter in a nearby city, and they'll take her and put her into trafficking. And then the family will never see her again. And it all comes down to the dollar. People want money, and so they'll do that even without thinking about the sanctity of human life. Human trafficking, there's 5 different kinds of human trafficking. Many you've probably heard of: sweatshops, labor trafficking, child soldiers. The flesh trade's probably the newest one. What happens is they'll take a human body. There are doctors that'll take out organs, and they'll sell them on the black market and leave that person to die. So they're finding in many countries, especially, that this is happening, and then they'll sell those organs on the black market. And then there's the sex trade, which is what majority of what we work with. I want to give you some statistics so you kind of understand a little bit more about human trafficking. It's the second largest but most rapidly growing criminal industry. Right now, there are 3 types of trafficking. You've probably heard of drug trafficking and arms trafficking. Drug trafficking is the highest still, and then human trafficking is right below it, and then we've surpassed arms trafficking. So, guns and different things like that we've surpassed, but the reason that we're still under drug trafficking is because it's worked hand in hand. A lot of times, especially in third world countries, they'll drug a girl so that she continues to come back. So then she's addicted to the drug, and then she stays and continues to work for them. So we have girls that have been rescued out, and not only do they have to work through the emotional part, but there's a lot of physical things, with drugs and different things that they have to come away from and detox from. There's 27 million people today enslaved. 50% are children. In most countries, a child is seen as 16 or younger. In the United States, we're one of the only countries that is 18 and younger. So if you can imagine, they're even younger in other countries. 80% of the victims are women and girls. There's $32 billion in revenue. So this is why so many countries, as well as the United States, aren't fighting it as strongly, because it's bringing in so much revenue. So especially in Cambodia, there's 3 tiers of trafficking, and they were at the highest. 3 is the highest. And so the United Nations came in and said, until you start to move to a level 2 and stop your trafficking issues, then we won't help you. They could freeze all of the money, they could freeze all of the food. So that's a powerful thing that's happening, is the United Nations are helping to start combat and stopping trafficking. There's over 1.2 million children trafficked on top of what's already being trafficked every year. So there are more children especially being put into human trafficking. These are just some of the pictures of the kids that we see in Cambodia. Fishing and different things are a form of trafficking. These kids are put out on a boat, and unless they meet a quota each day, they're not fed, or they're physically abused and different things because of that. Many of these kids have never learned to swim, so a lot of them die going under to try to release fish from the nets and different things like that because they haven't been taught to. But again, they're seen as worthless. So if they lose a child, it's not to them as though it's meaningful or anything. So just another painful idea. I'm not going to take you through all of that. There are different human trafficking outlets. Massage parlors are a big one. In San Francisco, California, I've done a lot of things there working with the homeless and things as well, but they have over 200 massage parlors, and they know that over 121 of those are brothels. Now, the sad part and the scary part about the United States is that because of our freedoms, it's harder to stop trafficking. For instance, at most of these massage parlors, they have barred windows, and they have locked doors, and by video camera, they can decide who to let in. And so by the time the police come to raid it, they've moved the girls underground. So in the United States, for as much of a blessing as our freedom can be, it can also be a huge hurt and a huge wall for us to stop human trafficking. Something for you to know, too, in the United States, our 2 advocates for human trafficking are Senator Barbara Boxer from California and then Hillary Clinton. Now, I can't say that I agree with all of their politics, but they both do a great job combating human trafficking. So that's a powerful thing to see, and to see them working so hard to get it to stop. Things that people don't realize: when the World Cup, the soccer championships and thing happen, 40 to 60 women are trafficked to that area. In the United States, when the Super Bowl happens, there's 12 to 15,000 women either trafficked into the United States, or the ones that are already being trafficked in the United States are moved to that state. And they're trafficked just because of the Super Bowl and things, because of the demand for that. A lot of people ask why that is. Pornography is so easily accessible on phones, on your own computers and things at home, that now it's gone to the next level. That now people traffic a child or a woman because they want that next level of pleasure. So that's where the horrific part of this is happening. Many Americans and different businesses in the United States send people overseas for jobs. They send them with thousands of dollars, and they don't have to have receipts coming back. So trafficking is actually seen as a tourist attraction in other countries, especially in Southeast Asia where we work. So we see people from all walks of life, from all countries, when we're there. And in Cambodia, it's very open. You'll see a man walking with a little girl, and you know that she's going to be trafficked. And we have to be very careful not to judge each person, because the hope would be that they're coming to adopt, or different things that way. But the United States cannot adopt in Cambodia at this point, because the person that was helping with that was bribing people more money here in the United States, so Cambodia cut us off. So it's pretty heartbreaking when all of these girls could have homes and different things that way as well. So there's just a lot of things legally that pretty horrific to see. We don't actually rescue the girls out at Rafa House. We're an aftercare facility. So we work with other organizations like International Justice Mission, who is worldwide. They rescue our girls out, but they have to go undercover. So they literally wear like a lapel or different things that's a video camera, and they have to get the brothel keepers or the mamazans or the pimps saying what the girls can do, the ages of the girls that they have, so that then they can be incarcerated, so that then we can put them in prison when they go in to raid them. The hardest part of that job is they have to take a girl for the night. They have to pose as a perpetrator, and they have to take the girl. They'll take her to a hotel where there's another woman in the hotel room. She'll speak to them in their language, explain that they're there, to help her to get her on tape, explaining that she doesn't want to be in this role, how she was put there. But the hardest part is they have to take her back. Because so often many organizations used to try to buy girls out of trafficking. And so you could send money to World Vision, $300 to buy a girl out. But the problem with that was that then those brothel keepers were taking $300 and buying 5 more girls. So we no longer buy a girl out. At this point, we have to work with their government as well as with IJM and other organizations who go in and rescue them. I can't imagine taking a girl, out and then having to take her back, which is pretty horrific for them. IJM is a nonprofit organization. It's a great organization to look up as well, but that's who we work mostly hand in hand with. So they rescue our girls and then bring them to us. Again, Micah 6:8 says, "He has showed you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." I get to take you through a little more about Rafa House so that you know kind of what we do. Our mission statement is Rafa House exists to restore victims of child slavery and sexual exploitation to sustainable freedom by partnering with advocates and building communities that extend unconditional love, physical rescue, and transformational healing. The word Rafa is actually a Hebrew word, and it means healing. So we're a house of healing. Again, we have 4 aftercare facilities, 2 in Cambodia. And the reason we have 2 in Cambodia is because, again, it's seen as a tourist attraction in the area. So we're on either side of the country. So say a girl was trafficked and her parents were the ones that put her into trafficking, we can move her to the whole other side of the country because they won't have the money to go and get her out of there or to try to bother her. And essentially, if they've sold their daughter, she is no longer theirs. So it's not as though we're kidnapping them. Again, we have to work in the parameters of the country. The country knows that we're there with girls that have been rescued out of human trafficking, but the people there think that we're just an orphanage for girls. So we can't share the different parts of the country we're in and different things like that just for their safety, but so we're on either side of the country in order to move them if we need to for their own safety. The first thing that we have at Rafa House is safe houses. It's a safe place to live. A lot of this will seem very generic to us. Many of these girls, for the first time when they come to our house, they get to pick their own clothes. No longer do they have to seductively dance or be put in certain clothes or not even clothed. A girl could be in a room without ever seeing daylight or coming out of it for 10 years. And so people don't realize, like within that room, a girl may have dashes on her wall, and that can either mean how many days she's lived there or how many times she's been raped. So it's pretty horrific for them. They're treated worse than dogs, worse than, different things that way. They're hardly fed. They can be beaten by the brothel keeper if they don't act as though they enjoyed the rape. They can be beaten by the perpetrator if they didn't act as though they enjoyed it. So there's different things. A lot of lies are told to them. It's a Buddhist nation, so our girls are told it's their karma, that what they did in their former life, it was their fault. And so they're put into trafficking. They're also put in fear of the idea that their family could be killed if they don't continue to do so, that they won't be given money, different things like that. Our girls never see the money that's paid to the brothel keepers, so they have no way of getting out of there. We have many Vietnamese girls that are moved to Cambodia, or Thai girls or different things, so they don't even know the language. So again, there's just so many barriers for them to ever even try to escape, different things that way. So they come to an area where they, for the first time, get to pick their own clothes. They get 3 meals a day. They have their own bed, which might seem simple to us. But again, when you've been made to do different things, when you've been thrown into a room, these are huge freedoms. They get shoes and clothes and education. When I speak to students, they're always like, they think it'd be horrible to have an education. But for these girls, for the first time, they get to learn things. They could be 15 years old, and it's the first time they're getting an education. So if you can even imagine, how hard that would be. And we have different things in Cambodia where they don't have to go, to a kindergarten classroom with a bunch of 5 and 6-year-olds. That's where it's more heartbreaking, but there's so many kids that are trafficked, so there are areas where many 15-year-olds are learning, first grade together. So at least then they're not ostracized and different things that way, but still heartbreaking. There's specialized counseling. One of my favorite things at Rafa House is how they set up our grounds. The girls have their bedrooms, and they have the kitchen, and they have, the counseling center. And the counseling center is put on a boat. It looks like Noah's Ark. But the reason that I like it is that they put that in a specific place so that it wasn't a place that the girls should be able to relax, or, places that would be comfortable for them to finally act like girls. It's not as though they have to sit in their room and be counseled, and then also be in their room, to go to bed or be in their room. They can leave all of that on the boat. Obviously, they're going to have nightmares, and they're going to think of different things like that at different times. But they did make sure it was in a place that was kind of off of the land, and a place that they could leave that there. We do many types of counseling. There's music counseling. There's, child therapy. There's many different things where they work with doll houses and things so that the littler girls can act out what happened to them. They get individualized counseling and group counseling. The counseling center is kind of dark, but that is a boat. Then what happens is our girls, as they get older, they can move to what we call our freedom centers. So again, at Rafa House, when a girl turns 18, she's not kicked out of Rafa House. We may have rescued her at 20. And so she comes, and we have places that they can learn a trade. So our girls can go to college, or they can learn a trade. So we have people that start to teach them cosmetology. They can learn to sew. They can learn to bake, different things like that. So we have training centers for them to do those things, but they're in a safe place where they have apartment-style living. So then they start to receive new freedoms, because our hope is to reintegrate them. For some of them, if you were trafficked for 10 years, it's going to take longer for you to trust people or to get back out into society. But we don't make them go at a certain age. We help them move to that level, and our counselors do that. They work specifically with the girls individually to make goals. So they learn vocational training like sewing, cosmetology, social work. They have supervised living. So again, even in the apartment-style living, we have counselors on site, and we have house parents, because they'll still have those nights that they'll have horrific dreams. They'll still have those times that they're struggling. For many of our girls, if you can even imagine what they've seen or what they've felt, many of them don't want to be girls. So we work with them to work through, cross-gender ideas and helping them not to want that, but understanding that they're worthwhile for the first time. Many of them struggle with the idea of homosexuality and different things that way because they've been beaten and abused so severely. When I was there in March, 2 of our girls got married, and each of them married a Christian man, which was very powerful because in a nation that it's about 1% is Christianity, they both found, for themselves that was such a powerful thing. I spoke at a college one time, and a girl said, so do you guys make them become Christians? And no, we don't. I told her we don't Christian traffic. That wouldn't be right. And so, but they choose to come to know Christ on their own. And when I was there again in March, 25 girls got baptized, and you should have seen the joy on their faces, because for the first time it was their choice. They got to make this decision because they had been learning about God. Now we present Christ to them, obviously. We also, in Cambodia, there are many different organizations that have aftercare facilities. For instance, Angelina Jolie started one, and we're so thankful for people who want to start them. But the hard part is there's a thing called a recidivism rate, and the recidivism rate means that so many girls go back into trafficking. And so at Angelina Jolie's and many of the other organizations, 80% of the girls go back into trafficking by their own choice. Less than 5% of our girls go back into trafficking, which is a huge difference in statistic. And the only difference within our organizations is that we represent and share Christ and present him to them. So that's very powerful for us to see that God is so much bigger than all of this, and we want you to understand that beautiful things are happening. I know I get to share horrible statistics with you, but the girls are growing. The fact that 25 chose to get baptized. The fact that 2 got married. One of my girls that I've known now for the last 4 years, her older sister, they were both trafficked by their mom. And her older sister got married and had her first child. And she and her husband work for Rafa House, which is very powerful because many of them won't be able to have children. Or many of them won't want to get married because of the fact of how they felt because of how men treated them for so long. So for them to see, the power of God, the beauty of, bearing children or becoming a wife, is a beautiful thing. These are some pictures of some of our girls. That's actually me up here getting my hair highlighted the first year I went. We have a young lady, there's a movie called Bot. Bot is Thai currency. She came from Thailand, and she had been addicted to drugs, different things because of the brothel keepers that she had been under. And she actually, they did a whole video, a documentary on her life, and it's called Bot. And I didn't realize it. It was 119 degrees, so I thought, I'm going to sit back and relax for a little bit and I had a fan on me for the first time, so I was cooled down. And the only American that was working over there at the time, she goes, Hannah? And I said, yeah. And she goes, did you want red highlights? Because I was getting blonde highlights, and the student that I had taken with me was getting red highlights. And I said, well, not really. And so the lady pulled them out really fast, and I had hot pink highlights. And before I started working for Rafa House, I was a youth minister. And so at the church I was at, I was like, this is going to be great. My students are going to live this up. And so I jumped up right away because the woman started crying and asking in Khmer if I hated her. Because their self-esteem is so low, because they don't know that they're loved and that there's more to them, than what people have treated them like. And so I was able to jump up and tell her it was going to be all the rage in the United States. And for myself, I kept it in until they washed out, because every time it reminded me of her story. When I looked in the mirror, I could think of this beautiful girl that for the first time someone loved her enough to say, no, this is great, what you did was great. We also went to a bakery called Bloom, and it was a cupcakery, which is now, even here in the United States, they're a big deal. And we went in, and all of the people on our team got to get a cupcake. And they were so excited, and one of the girls that worked there ran out the back crying. And her trainer went after her, and we found out later that it was the first time someone told her she did a good job. That what we tasted was amazing. And I think back to my childhood. How many of us got stickers on our paper that said good job on, just an assignment for school? And these kids, for the first time at 15, or 20, are feeling like they can do something that's good. They also do nails, pedicures, and manicures. We don't teach them massage therapy because so many of them that was the front for what they had to do, so we won't put them back in that situation. These are some of the cupcakes and cakes. The cakes, that is, the purse is a cake. So they're pretty powerful. Weddings are a big deal in Cambodia. They can last 6 to 7 days. They're crazy. And they have 6 to 7 different dresses, and even the men have to change 6 to 7 times. And so the cakes are about as big as I am. And so it's just powerful and amazing to see the work that they're learning to do. One of our facilities, the girls learn to work on a weaving loom. So our scarves out there are silk scarves. The girls work with a silkworm farm. I got to go and see that this last time. Fascinating. I can't even imagine learning to do all of that. In 8th grade, I tried to make a pillow. I got an A on it, got home, it busted open. And these girls have learned to sew beautifully, and that's what they do for a living. Finally, we also do reintegration programs, so we help them get back out into society. We find job placement. We also give startup loans and grants. Many of our girls have started their own salons or bakeries or different things like that, and our counselors continue to go back and check up on them and to check on those things and see how they're doing. They get family counseling. Again, this is one of my favorite things. If our girls weren't trafficked by their parents, we bring the parents in. They can't stay at Rafa House, but we have a church outside that has an apartment. And so they stay there. We bring counseling to the whole family. Because again, the parents are still Buddhist. And in this nation, the girls are seen as used goods. So they would be trafficked again by their own family, even if they hadn't done it the first time. So we bring them in to counsel the whole family. But not only that, we teach them to grow mushrooms as a family, and we send them home with 1,500 mushroom plants to start their own generating an income, so that way their girls as well as they know how to generate an income so that they don't sell them. Our girls learn to do all sorts of agriculture, things that I can't even fathom. So when I go there, they're teaching me most of the time. This is the mushroom project. I didn't know you put mushrooms in a bag and then planted them. Finally, we do prevention programs because we'd rather stop trafficking before it starts. So we have a program called Kids Club, which one of our missionaries there, their family moved to a very impoverished area that now they have over 600 kids weekly that come. And they do a program where it's $30 a month, and it helps us to train the parents again, as well as our social workers go and check on the families to make sure girls aren't being trafficked, different things that way. And then the kids come and learn about God. So it's pretty powerful. Every time we go, they sing and dance for us. They get pretty excited. So Woman Island was during the killing fields. If you've heard of the Khmer Rouge, over 2 million people were killed, all the educated people. So at this point, Woman Island was a killing field. And at the time that the United Nations came in and told them they had to work towards not having as much trafficking, they banished a bunch of prostitutes and women that had been trafficked onto Woman Island. So imagine already the fear of the Khmer Rouge and the genocide that happened then and the killing field of Woman Island, and then they were banished to Woman Island. So we have a church out there now through Stephanie's dad, Joe Garman, and what happened was one of our missionaries' dads is the one that does the ministry out there, and now we've been training the women out there to sew as well, and their children are able to come inland and go to school as well. So it's pretty amazing to see, but we're trying to do prevention work there as well. These are some of the parents in our prevention program learning to sew. And these are just some of the pictures of the kids. We partner with many different organizations in order to help our girls to learn different industries and things. All of these organizations also have safe areas for the girls to stay and to sleep, and our counselors continue to work with them if they stay there to learn to bake or different things like that. We do pursue justice for our girls. I presented a bill before my congressman a few years ago, and now we've had to wait because of the health bill and different things like that for a while. But what they're trying to do is help other organizations and other governments to be able to help other governments weed out the unhealthy parts of the police force. Because many of the police in this area, we would be ready to go in, International Justice Mission would be, and they would tell the brothel that we were coming, and so then they would move the girls before they could be rescued out. And so that's been a huge issue around the world, again, because these people are getting paid money to do that. So those are different things that we're trying to help weed out and make a difference at. These are some of our girls at Rafa House. You can see the different ages. That's Chetra, the one I told you about that was 4 when she came in. The powerful part now is that we have before and after pictures for ourselves to look at, and to see the hope that they have now is very powerful. We have one little girl that was labor trafficked, beautiful little girl. She was brought into Rafa House, and what had happened was she had been in a bricklaying situation where she was about 2 or 3 at the time that she started, and she was too little to be able to do enough work that they wanted her to, so they injected her body with fluids from the neck down, and it paralyzed her body from the neck down. Her name's Conf. In Cambodia, it's kind of a brutal nation, so they name you basically to describe you. Conf means hunchback, and so she is very much hunchbacked, but what they would do is they'd lay her out in the streets and get more money for her by putting a bucket out there instead of her doing actual physical labor. She is on the picture on my table out there with my mom. My mom got to come to Cambodia this summer. I was there for 3 months, and she came for a month to teach and to train our teachers, and she worked with Conf quite a bit. But she now, for the first time, has started to move her fingers, and she's in a wheelchair, and she's been able to start speaking. She couldn't speak for a long time. Some of that was shock. Some of that was physically just the abuse she had received. So there are amazing things happening at Rafa House. It's humbling to get to be there, to know the stories of each of the girls, and to know that God is so much bigger than the acts and the sin that we live in. The thing that we always like to remind people is that we have to pray for the men that are going and taking the girls and raping them for the night, because until their hearts change, none of this will change. And so for as hard as it is to fathom praying for people who are hurting, innocent, victims, it's still the most powerful part that we can do. We need people that will be willing to pray, to educate yourself, to share with others, and to tell her story. And then just to partner with Rafa House. Those are, sometimes people like to know books or different things to learn more about it, but it's very, for me, humbling to get to come and to share with you different things. The first year that I went to Cambodia, we were hauling around 150 brushes and combs, and one of the missionaries looked at me and she said, "Why are we taking these everywhere with us?" And I said, "I don't know, God's got bigger plans than we do, I'm sure." And we got to our flagship, the first Rafa House that was ever built, and all 150 of the girls there at the time had lice. And so we got to scrub their heads. I had my arms up to here in the lice treatment and everything. And these girls hated the idea of having this done, because when people come, they get their hair done and they're so excited to meet you and different things like that. And for the first time, instead of them feeling like they were on display, we got to hang out with them. And we got to be real parents and real sisters and real family to them. One of the students that I had taken with me, she picked out nits out of one girl's head for 3 hours. And the girls told our staff that it was the first time people had spent that time with them. Not just having fun, but just being with them. And for us, that's the bigger part of Rafa House. God brings healing to each one of us in so many different ways. And for these girls, it was the being with them, the helping them to recognize they have a story, they have a voice, and that we love them enough that if it was just one of them that was ever saved, it would be worthwhile. Again, Micah 6:8 says, "He has showed you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God." I'm going to pray, and then I think we'll have a break before the service. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for today. God, I thank you that you require so much of us. And so often, I know in my life, I'm slower to do the work. And so, God, I pray that you would continue just to put in me just that action and that hope and that want to love on and to recognize that even people in my own neighborhood are hurting. God, people here in Phoenix are being trafficked in many different ways. And God, I thank you for just this group of people, this family of believers. I pray, God, that you would just help each one of us to recognize your work and your power. God, I pray just for ideas, things that whether they could help us at Rafa House figure out to do or things that they could do in their own environment, God, that you would just convict our spirits. Help us to know that you will walk with us through it, and that, God, you require of us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with you. So thank you today for just being able to be here and to recognize how powerful your healing is. It's in your name we pray. Amen.